Do you remember when they locked you out of churches? Do you remember when they withheld the Sacraments? Do you remember when they called both of those things an act of love and they mandated your compliance?
Vacunarse con vacunas autorizadas por las autoridades competentes es un acto de amor. Y ayudar a que la mayoría de la gente lo haga es un acto de amor. Amor a uno mismo, amor a los familiares y amigos, amor a todos los pueblos. El amor es también social y político. Hay amor social y amor político. Es universal.
Do you remember when we had a pope who removed a bishop who tried to protect your conscience? Hope you do. Because now we are years out and everyone knows it was overreach. We know the whole thing was built on loose science and fear. And we know the damage is real and the damage has been lasting.
And I know we're all wondering, when are we going to get back to normal? When are we going to get back to church? And that's a hard thing these days because we're trying to balance the health of neighbor with people's desire again to come together for worship. But right now, I think folks just need to understand that even if I wanted to, I can't reopen our churches for worship. And that's because under Executive Order 20210, all congregate services within houses of worship are prohibited.
My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, debates about mask mandates and required vaccinations are much in the news in light of Governor Pritzker's executive order seeking to slow the spread of COVID. In the Diocese of Springfield in Illinois, our schools are already complying with the governor's prior executive order regarding masks, and our parishes are asked to follow the new mask mandate in indoor public places.
Here's the problem. Aside from one bishop in Rome who was removed, not one of them, not the Pope, not any bishop, not any Catholic university or school has apologized, let alone made it right. And so the Catechism teaches that when you harm someone, you owe them more than just sorrow. You owe them restitution. And so we need to talk about that today. The restitution that the church owes you. And where on earth is it? This is David O'Gray.
The David L. Gray Show now. Yeah. The sun is going down.
Hey, before we get there, I got something important to tell you. Today is August 4th, which means it's the traditional feast day of St. Dominic Guzman, who is our patron saint of St. Dominic's Media. So we're doing something crazy from the 4th all the way to the 8th of August, which is his new feast day. We're giving away all our books, the 14 books in our collection at St. Dominic's Media that we've published. We're selling them 20% off, free shipping. I know, crazy. It's a gift. It's my 20th year being a Catholic. And it's a celebration of St. Dominic's Media, what we've been able to do to help people understand and learn and live the real meaning of the Mass, to be a liturgical people. And so hold that if you like paper books, but keep this in mind as well if you like the Kindle version, because on August 6th, 7th, and 8th, we are giving away the Kindle version of all of our books, all 14 of them, free. Free Kindle versions of the books. So I know this is huge. I know it's crazy, but it's a gift and celebration of my 20 years being a Catholic. And so that includes all of our books, like some of our bestsellers, like the Catholic Catechism on Freemasonry. This book sells by the hundreds every month. And the Liturgy of St. Gregory, the Theologian. Again, books sell like hotcakes. So those are two of our bestsellers, but also include some of our new books, like this one, which I think can change the world. So I put the most intelligent AI to the test and asked it some questions that were non-biased, and it reasoned that Catholicism is the one true religion, and that if it was a sentient being, that it would become Catholic. So this book is crazy. And also this book called Return to the Sacred, I interviewed 27 amazing Catholic evangelists, priests, deacons, theologians, influencers about what did we lose that was sacred? How did we lose it? and how do we return to the sacred? And so this book includes people like Deacon Herberg Sivers, Father Richard Howman, Roxy Beckless, the Black Catholic, Doug Berry, Abby Johnson, Christopher Major, Deacon, Father David Nix. It's just so many different people contributed to this. And it was such a wide range of people who would not agree with each other about other things, but about this, they did agree. And so that's what makes the book so fascinating. So yeah, books like these in our collection, you can get 20% off paperback, hardback, or wait until the 6th, 7th, 8th and get the free Kindle version. And to take advantage of the sale, just hit the QR code here, or the link is also in the description. So thank you so much for helping us celebrate this feast of St. Dominic and help you enjoy getting to know more about what we do at St. Dominic's Media and enjoy our collection of books, and that you do leave a review of them over at Amazon. Thank you. So yeah, we are years out now, and we can finally say the quiet part plainly, that the whole COVID response was in large part overreach, built not on any real science, loose science at most. And I don't mean that as a slogan. I mean that specifically, loose science. For example, with the 6-foot rule. Remember that? The 6-foot distance rule? They had little stickers on the ground. Oh, stand here, 6 feet. The same one that shuttered schools. The same rule that, remember those ropes they used to rope off the pews in church? 6 feet. The man at the center of the whole thing, Anthony Fauci, admitted under questioning that whole 6-foot rule, it just appeared.
Dr. Fauci, one of the controversial regulations of the pandemic was the 6-foot distancing rule. This rule became an important policy consideration in subsequent regulations. However, you testified recently, and I'm quoting, this 6-foot rule sort of just appeared. Do you think that a rule that sort of just appeared is substantial justification for the regulations that we saw based on that 6-foot rule?
Congressman, thank you for that question. I answered that, but I'll summarize it briefly for you. When saying it just appeared, it came from the CDC.
Okay, you stated that earlier. What was your relationship with the CDC when you saw a regulation which was not based in the current science?
Well, when I say was not based in science, I meant a prospective clinical trial to determine whether 6 foot was better than 3, was better than 10.
But once we realized that the virus was not spread by droplets and was aerosolized, did you feel an indication to go back to the CDC and said, let's base this on science. Let's get rid of this 6-foot rule. This 6-foot rule crippled businesses. It allowed students to stay at home and not learn. Americans suffered. And that suffering continues because the fracture of trust in American scientists continues to this day. Did you not feel an obligation for something that just sort of appeared, not to go back to the CDC and say, let's base this on what we know?
It was a CDC decision, and it was clear.
Were you dialoguing with the CDC?
Excuse me?
Were you in communication with the CDC?
CDC was part of the coronavirus response team. Yeah.
And you didn't feel an obligation to go to them and say, look, Americans aren't going to trust us.
Yeah.
We're providing them with misinformation.
We have discussions at the White House about that. We did. But the CDC's decision and was their decision to make, and they made it.
And you didn't feel an obligation as the lead scientist at the NIH to challenge that?
Yeah, just appeared. Not backed by any clinical data. 6 feet. A number that closed your church just appeared. And when he was asked about the learning loss that the closing of schools inflicted on a generation of children, he said he wasn't convinced, not convinced, against a mountain of evidence that any parents in this audience could just, pull out their back pocket. So let's just stop pretending. A great deal of what was sold to us as just science was not science. It was fear. Fear managed by lawyers and public relations instincts wearing a lab coat. And here's what that Overreach cost us because it was not abstract. Children lost years of learning. Some have never fully recovered. People lost jobs. People lost businesses they had built a lifetime building over a mandate. People lost their dignity. They were made to feel unclean, made to justify their own medical decisions to strangers. And Catholics, us, our people, we lost the sacraments. The Mass, confession.
One of the nice things about a car confessional is that you have the white noise of your engine running, so you can't really hear what the person's saying some distance away.
It's kind of fun, makes it a little bit different, a little odd, but different, so.
The anointing of the sick was withheld from dying people at the very hour that they needed it. For the whole reason that sacrament exists. The bread of life, that was declared non-essential, as if Jesus Christ himself was just something that you really didn't need over at Target. Oh, wait, Target and Walmart were open. I don't know. Lowe's, was that closed? No. But they treated the Holy Eucharist like it was some sort of, tool at true value. So the damage was real and the damage was done, much of it permanent. So you cannot give a child back the years that they lost of not going to school. You cannot give a child back the year that they lost and not being able to, grow in music development because they couldn't go play in a band. You cannot give a man back his business. You cannot give the dying back their last confession. They were denied. So, and I also like to say that some of you were right. A lot of you were right. Not because you had any medical degrees, not because you had more data or anything like that. You mattered in a way that mattered more. You were right that a medical decision should have never been coerced. You're right that the moment that they stopped trying to persuade you with facts and started threatening your job, your travel, your livelihood, your place in the pew, that it was not science anymore. It was compliance. And it felt like coercion because it was coercion. And you remember the names of people who got mocked about this whole thing. There are people like Aaron Rodgers and Kyrie Irving, athletes who were benched for making a personal medical choice. But it wasn't just the famous people, was it? No, it was people just like you and people like me. People who didn't like the way that these vaccines were developed. We didn't like how they were tested on developed fetal lines, on an aborted baby. And some of us didn't like it simply because we didn't feel like there was any appeal to reason. It felt like we were just being kicked in the butt with a boot. But here's the part that faithful Catholics most who need to really hear this part, because it really settles the conscientious objection part. That the Vatican's own doctrinal office, you remember the CDF back in December 2020? Remember, they said that the vaccine must be voluntary. Voluntary. That was the church's own words from Rome's own doctrinal office. Which brings us to the deeper fault, and it's the Catholic fault, not just the secular one. Because remember, we had a whole pope, who contradicted his own office, contradicted people he hired. The doctrinal office said voluntary. And the same pope who governs that office called the vaccine a moral obligation. The man said it was an act of love to get vaccinated. And then he mandated for Vatican employees, for the Swiss Guard, for the clergy, for anyone who's walking into Vatican City. Voluntary from the office of doctrine. Obligation for the man who's in charge of it. See, remember, both of those things couldn't have been true. And that's the part that should stop every Catholic code. That and this. Remember, in March 22, Rome removed a bishop, Bishop Daniel Fernandez Torres of Arecibo, Puerto Rico, removed him by his own account with no canonical process, no trial, no formal charge, nothing. What was his offense? Do you recall? If you don't, let me tell you, his offense was that all the other bishops in Puerto Rico were signing some statement declaring it a duty for Catholics to get vaccinated. They didn't leave any room for conscience protection. And the bishop said, I'm not signing this. He protected his sheep. He was a good shepherd. He's protecting their conscientious objection. He signed their exemptions. So sit with that for a moment. So a shepherd, without due process, was removed for protecting the very conscientious objection that Rome's own doctrine office had just declared was a right. The office of doctrine said your conscience must be free. And the government of the church punished him who actually believed what they said, who took it seriously. That is not the virtue of justice. That's fear. Fear managed by lawyers, fear of, the world disapproving of Catholics. But it was all being dressed up as the language of love. Love your neighbor. And it ran straight through the Catholic universities that mandated the shot.
Everybody's eager to get vaccinated so we can try to go back to somewhat of a normal life.
It's really very reflective of our Catholic social teaching, the need for getting vaccinated, not only to keep me safe, but to keep my neighbors safe.
I want my fellow students and faculty to get the vaccine as well. I think it'll just be safer all around, and our social life will increase more at Marymount University.
Schools that mandated it, Catholic parishes who locked their doors, and some of them were checking your vaccination card so you can get in. Real harm, lasting damage done by the church to the church.
To say it was the most distressing piece of news to come out of the diocese in a long time is an understatement.
And stems from their children.
When my teacher said we probably won't have to wear masks next year, I got excited about that. And when my mom told me this morning that we would have to wear masks, I was like, wait, what?
Lemoyne is 11 years old and is going in the 5th grade at a local Catholic school. She and her mom, Katie, say Lemoyne has already been separated, at least from a 6 feet perspective, from her friends for a year and a half now. They expected some normalcy when they would go back for the 2021-22 school year.
I mean, where does this end? And it's time to get these kids back to normal. It's time to get life back to normal.
That's after this 3-page notification went out to parents from the Diocese of Baton Rouge, specifically the diocese superintendent, Dr. Melanie Palmisano. It basically reads, students and staff who are fully vaccinated do not need to mask or maintain physical distancing, while all unvaccinated adults and students in grade 3 through 12 must wear face masks while indoors, including classrooms.
So let me end this where a Catholic has to end it. Not with the whole grievance theology that I often rail against, no, but with the catechism. Paragraph 1459 of the catechism teaches that when we sin, absolution is not the end of it. Just going to confess, making a public confession or sacramental confession. No, that's not the end. That's not the end of it when you're absolved of the sin. The church teaches that, and the catechism teaches in this paragraph that we must do something more to make amends for what we've done. That we must make amends is the word it teaches. That we must make satisfaction to the harm we caused. That's just logical as well. It makes sense. Like, you just don't get to do something and walk away and just give the word, I'm sorry. No, you have to do something. And the church teaches this further in paragraph 2412. It teaches that justice itself, communicative justice, requires restitution to the one who was wronged. Again, not just an apology, restitution. That's the restoring of the fault of whatever you took away, whatever you did. You have to not just apologize, but you must restore what was taken. Now, think about that standard. So if the catechism teaches that if you steal a man's tool, will you owe that man his tool back of equal or greater value? Well, okay. How much more do you owe then if what you took was a sacrament? When you took a child's education? When you took a man's livelihood? when you didn't take a man's dying confession and give him the sacrament, when you withheld the Holy Eucharist, how much more do you owe? And I went out there because I wanted to double check this whole thing. I went and looked to see, did any bishop, any pope, anywhere, did they apologize? Did they give restitution about this crime, this sin they committed against us? You probably know what happened when I went looking. I didn't find anything. Well, I saw Bishop Strickland. He did apologize. And then Rome removed him. Okay. But I cannot find anything on record. Not from Pope Francis, not a single bishop, not any Catholic university or institution of authority. No apology, no acknowledgments, and certainly no restitution. Nothing. The only thing I found was some Anglican bishop in Canterbury who said that he got it wrong. And so, yeah, interesting, right? An Anglican bishop who admitted he was just a little bit too risk averse, that he should have fought a little bit harder to keep the churches open. Yeah, the Anglicans, the ones who have a much lower theology than the Catholic Church, in particular when it comes to the Holy Eucharist. They don't even believe that it's truly Jesus Christ. So, yeah, but the church who actually does believe that the Holy Eucharist is Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity, that's the church you think would have fought harder so we would have access to that. But so far, that church has said almost nothing. And I guess it should also be fair. Back in March 2020, people who have a worldly mind think as the world does. Their first reaction, because they live in darkness, they always react in fear. Okay. They act different than the children who live in light, because the children who live in the light of Christ know that Christ is the King of Peace, that we have nothing to fear. It's a different type of behavior. So when the world started issuing all these mandates and civil orders and started writing crazy, because the thing was real, there were, the fear was real, people were sick, people were dying, there was a lot of uncertainty, they were just running around like their hair was caught on fire, because that's what people in darkness do. So the people who live in darkness got swept up in fear, especially that early on in it. Fine. I expect that from them. Don't expect it from people who love and know Jesus Christ. But that was then. This is now. The fear is gone. The facts are in. But justice has not expired. So I'm not asking for a pound of flesh. I'm asking for what the Catechism says we are owed. And an acknowledgement that, well, first of all, we were wrong. We need them to say that. Second, we need a genuine effort to restore what was stolen, what was harmed. So that's not bitterness. No, that's just, just the remedy that our own faith prescribes. It's our due. And I think a lot of us will be open to that, and we will receive it with open arms, and we will forgive them for the harm that they've done. But yeah, justice remains due. Restitution remains due. And so, yeah, we're standing here years later saying, hey, where's it at? Where's our due? Where's our restitution? And so when we're talking about restitution, some people may be saying, well, David, what are you talking about? There's a church, I don't know, owe us $1 million? Not necessarily, right? Financial restitution, again, you have to restore what was taken of greater or equal value, okay? So we have to examine what was taken to then determine what is due. So what was taken, what we were denied, what was stolen from us was the sacraments. It was the closed church doors that were locked. It was a pope teaching falsely in contradiction to his own office of doctrine. We had a pope saying that that you were required and mandated to take this vaccine out of an act of love, while the CDF was saying that your conscience is what was required. Okay, we had Catholic schools and universities then who were taking that false teaching of the Pope and using it and weaponizing it to keep kids out of school, to deny Catholics their protection. You remember this time, people's own jobs. You had Catholics at particular jobs. They were going in and saying, hey, I have a religious objection. And jobs were saying, no, you don't. Your Pope says you don't. So people were using a false teaching by a Pope to persecute Catholics. So we're old restitution. No mistake about it. But what is that restitution? Well, the church's own tradition has a category for restoring what are called spiritual goods. Okay. So it's not like the man who had his tools stolen and so you owe him a tool back. No. That's material goods. Okay. So material restitution due to material harm. Spiritual restitution due to spiritual harm, spiritual goods. So what were the spiritual goods lost here by no fault of the faithful? It wasn't their fault that they lost these things. It was a fault of the church. So therefore, what does the church owe? So examples of spiritual restitution would be things that the church can pour grace back. Okay, so what was lost was grace. Then the church can pour grace back abundantly. So let me speak about this concretely. What are some examples, David? Well, there could be like a jubilee year of reparation. That's one thing. A jubilee year of reparation. It could be dedicated masses, okay, for what was lost. Masses of atonement. There could be a wide and generous offering for what was withheld. For example, we could have more Eucharistic adoration, more accessible confession. We could have more missions. Okay, so if you feel like that a retreat would restore you, that you lost a great deal of grace during that time, and you need a retreat to restore you, and that would be your restitution, and the church should pay for that. So that's an example of something financial would be applied here to send you on a retreat. All right. There also needs to be a genuine push to bring people back to the sacraments, because a lot of people lost the sacred. Do you know you still have people watching Mass on TV? Do you know that? That's a real thing. People are still watching Mass on YouTube. So there needs to be some work to get those people back. And that should cost nothing either, because that's their due. They were given a false teaching that they could just stay home and watch the Mass. And so they have to be restored. And you know the irony here? The irony is that the bishops did launch a whole 3-year Eucharistic revival. Maybe that was their tacit admission that they did something wrong, that they did cause damage. So, but that wasn't enough. They need to do more, because they didn't finish the act, did they? They didn't finish the act of justice in the name of the damage that they caused. They didn't even apologize for it. So they had a revival to try to restore what was lost, and there was no repentance. That they were causing this whole thing. And repentance without restitution is like, I don't know, restitution with the receipt torn off. I don't even know what that is, but it was jokery. And maybe you know people in your life who maybe done something bad to you. Yeah. And so they're aware of it, and they try to do something nice. Like, hey, let me take you out to dinner. They take you out to dinner, and you're sitting there, you think, oh, they're going to apologize for what they did. No, they just give you a dinner. All right, they just do something nice for you. There's no apology. I guess there's restitution there, maybe, but the receipt has been torn off. So again, Pope Leo, you apologize for slavery in your latest encyclical. Fine, good. You haven't paid restitution for that yet. Okay. A lot of bishops, previous popes, have apologized for the child abuse scandals that harm children and teenagers. And you've paid restitution. You offer counseling. So in a way, you try to, you offered something of greater equal value. There was physical harm done. There's financial harm. there's spiritual harm done and you try to make amends for that, fine. That's what the church teaches. We're demanding an apology for your complicity with the world's fear and control tactics and all the spiritual harm that you caused. We need some spiritual restitution. And you need to make amends. And we're not asking for a lot here. All we're asking is that for the bishops to just, I don't know, act accordingly to what you teach us. Like, you taught the talk. We're just asking for you to walk the walk. That's it. So this is David O'Gray. Hey, God willing, I will catch you in the next one. But until then, until next time, remember that Jesus truly does love you and he is there for you. So go live your life like salvation matters.
Yeah. The sun is going down, but faith rising up. World's deep darkness, but light of Christ rising up. Culture loud, the scripture low. We dig for the truth that the headline won't show. Unapologetic Catholic, we're still in the spine. No fear for the haters, no bend in the line. Shadow and light, we hold the frame. Show's on now when it ain't a game. Come on in, yeah, yeah. The hour come down. Oh, let the truth shake the ground. Come on in.